My friend, one of the most comforting truths you will ever embrace in your life is this: God fully understands your pain. That means there is nothing you have ever felt, nothing you are feeling right now, and nothing you will ever experience that is a mystery to Him. The Lord is not distant, indifferent, or detached from what you are going through. He is deeply aware, intimately acquainted, and personally involved in every detail of your life, even in the areas you don't talk about, even in the hurts you hide. When we say God understands, we're not talking about a shallow kind of understanding, like someone who nods politely, but doesn't really grasp what's in your heart. We're talking about a deep, divine, all-knowing awareness that penetrates every corner of your soul. The Bible tells us in Hebrews 4:15 that we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who has been tempted in every way as we are, yet without sin. That's talking about Jesus, God in the flesh. He didn't just look down from heaven and observe humanity. He stepped into humanity. He put on skin, walked our dusty roads, faced our daily pressures, and felt the full force of human sorrow. Think about that for a moment. The Creator of the universe chose to experience life the way we live it. He knew what it was to feel hunger gnaw at his stomach. He knew the ache of physical exhaustion after long days of ministry. He knew the sting of rejection when people turned their backs on him. He knew the sharp pain of betrayal when one of his closest friends sold him for a handful of coins. He knew the heart-ache of loss when those he loved suffered and died. He knew the crushing weight of being misunderstood, falsely accused, and unjustly condemned. Every human emotion you have felt, he has felt. Every trial you have endured, he has endured something like it, and more. You might be sitting there thinking, but no one knows what it's like to go through what I've gone through. And from a human standpoint, that might be true. People can sympathize, but they may not fully understand. They can offer comfort, but they can't truly feel the depth of your pain. That's where God is different. He doesn't just see the surface. He sees the hidden wounds that others miss. He knows what keeps you awake at night. He knows the heaviness that settles on you in the quiet moments. He knows the memories that still hurt when you think about them. And his understanding isn't just intellectual. It's personal, because he has walked through the valley of suffering himself. The fact that God understands your pain means you never have to explain yourself to him. You don't have to find the right words in prayer to make him get it. Sometimes all you can do is sit in his presence and weep. Sometimes you can't even form a sentence, but your tears speak a language that he understands perfectly. Psalm 56:8 says, he collects your tears in his bottle and records them in his book. That's not poetry for the sake of sentiment. That's truth. Your pain matters to him so much that not a single tear goes unnoticed. And because he understands, he can meet you in that pain with perfect compassion. You see, human understanding has limits. A friend may care for you deeply, but they can still grow wary or say the wrong thing. People can be sincere, but still fail you. God's compassion, on the other hand, is limitless. It is not based on convenience, mood, or capacity. His love for you is rooted in his very nature. When your heart aches, his heart aches with you. When you're too weak to stand, his strength upholds you. This understanding also means that God will never dismiss or minimize what you're going through. Sometimes when we share our struggles with people, they might say, it's not that bad, or you'll get over it. But God never talks to his children that way. He doesn't belittle your suffering. He doesn't rush you through the process. He walks with you at your pace, knowing exactly what you can handle and when you can handle it. And in the process, he is gently shaping you, building your character and strengthening your faith. You might be tempted to think that because he's God, your struggles are too small to matter to him. After all, he's holding the universe together. Why would he care about your anxious thoughts at 2 a.m.? But that's exactly the beauty of his love. The same God who holds the stars in place also holds your heart in his hands. His infinite power is matched by his intimate care. No struggle is too insignificant, and no pain is too great for him to understand. This is why you can come to Him with absolute honesty. You don't have to hide your frustration, your disappointment, or even your doubts. Some believers think they need to come to God with polished prayers, carefully chosen words, and a strong front. But if you look at the Psalms, you'll see that David poured out his heart without filter. He told God when he was angry, when he was confused, when he was desperate. And God never rebuked him for being real because God understood. Friend, your relationship with God deepens when you realize you don't have to pretend with Him. You can cry out, "Lord, I don't understand what you're doing," and still be held in His arms. You can say, "Father, I feel so alone," and still be reminded of His presence. He is not surprised by your feelings. He knows them already, and He loves you through them. When you truly believe that God understands your pain, it changes the way you walk through trials. It removes the fear of being alone. It silences the lie that no one cares. It gives you the courage to face each day, knowing there is one who sees every step and knows exactly how you feel. And because He understands, you can trust that He knows exactly what to do about it. His wisdom is perfect, His timing is flawless, and His plans for you are good. So whatever your struggle is today, whether it's a broken relationship, a financial crisis, a health battle, a secret sin, or an overwhelming sense of loss, know this: God understands it better than you do. And He doesn't just understand. He's walking with you through it, carrying you when you can't walk yourself, and guiding you toward a future filled with His peace and hope. Hold on to Him, because the God who understands your pain is the same God who will heal it. My friend, I want to remind you of a truth that can anchor your heart in the fiercest storms. You are never alone in your struggle. I know sometimes it feels like you're walking through the fire all by yourself. You may have friends, you may have family, but deep down, you feel like no one truly sees the weight you're carrying. There are days when the silence is deafening, when the phone doesn't ring, when no one asks how you're really doing. And in those quiet, lonely moments, the enemy whispers lies into your heart. Nobody cares. Nobody understands. You are all by yourself, but that is not the truth. The truth is, no matter how lonely life feels, God is with you every single step of the way. The presence of God is not a vague idea or a religious phrase. It is a living reality. Jesus Himself promised in Matthew 28:20, "I am with you always, even to the end of the age." Not just when you're on the mountaintop celebrating victories. Not just when your prayers are being answered exactly the way you hoped. But even when the valley is dark. Even when your faith feels weak. Even when you've been knocked down and you're not sure how to get back up. His presence is unbroken, unchanging, and unshakable. When you're going through struggles, it's easy to measure God's nearness by your feelings. If you feel encouraged, you assume He's close. If you feel discouraged, you assume He's far. But feelings can deceive you. God's presence is not based on how you feel. It's based on His promise. And His promises cannot be broken. Whether you feel Him or not, He is there. Whether you hear Him or not, He is there. Whether you understand what He's doing or not, He is there. Sometimes the very reason you don't feel His presence is because you're expecting Him to show up in a particular way. You think He should solve your problem immediately, and because He hasn't, you assume He's absent. But my friend, God's presence is not always about instant rescue. Sometimes it's about constant companionship. He may not remove the storm right away, but He will step into the boat with you and ride it out until the waves are still. When you read the Scriptures, you see this pattern again and again. Think about Joseph, betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, unjustly thrown into prison. From the outside, it looked like he was abandoned. But the Bible says in Genesis 39:21, the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love. Even in the dungeon, Joseph wasn't alone. Or think about Daniel in the lion's den. God didn't prevent Daniel from entering the den, but He was there with him to shut the mouths of the lions. And then there's Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace. The king looked and saw not 3 men walking in the fire, but 4. And the 4th looked like the Son of God. The fire didn't disappear. but they didn't burn because God was in it with them. That's the reality of your life too. God may not take you out of every difficult situation instantly, but He will never leave you to face it by yourself. His presence means you have a companion in every trial, a comforter in every pain, and a counselor in every moment of confusion. He is the one who walks beside you, goes before you, and stands behind you to protect you. You may wonder, if God is with me, why do I still feel so weak? Why am I still afraid? Because sometimes His presence is not about removing all fear instantly. It's about giving you the courage to take the next step despite the fear. Psalm 23 doesn't say, I will never walk through the valley of the shadow of death. It says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. The promise is not that the valley disappears, but that you will never walk it alone. And here's something you need to know. The presence of God is most often revealed in the quiet, ordinary moments. We tend to look for dramatic signs, burning bushes, parting seas, miraculous escapes. But more often, God's presence comes as a whisper in your spirit, a peace in your heart, or a small, unexplainable strength that gets you through the day. It's that calm you feel when the diagnosis comes, but you know somehow you're going to make it. It's that courage to get out of bed when depression tries to keep you down. It's that assurance that says, I don't know how this will end, but I know who is holding me. If you've ever walked with the Lord for any length of time, you can look back and see moments where you thought you were alone. But now you realize He was there all along. That time you barely made rent, yet somehow the exact amount you needed came in. That season when your heart was shattered, but you look back and wonder how you made it through the nights. That moment you stood at the crossroads of despair and hope, and someone gave you the strength to choose hope. That was God with you. This is why the enemy works so hard to convince you that you're alone. Because if he can isolate you in your mind, he can weaken your faith. But the truth is, your struggle may isolate you from people, but it can never isolate you from God. The psalmist said in Psalm 139, where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. There is no hospital room so quiet, no night so dark, no valley so deep that God cannot reach you there. Knowing you are never alone changes everything. It changes the way you pray. You can pour out your heart, knowing someone is listening. It changes the way you fight battles. You don't have to rely on your own strength because the Almighty is fighting for you. It changes the way you face the future. You don't have to walk into tomorrow with fear because God is already there waiting for you. My friend, I can't promise you that the struggle will end overnight. I can't tell you that the road ahead will always be easy. But I can tell you this, if you are a child of God, you will never, ever walk it alone. Even when your emotions say He's gone, He is still right there. Even when the pain drowns out your prayers, He is still holding you. Even when you feel like you can't make it one more step, He is carrying you. So hold on to that truth. Let it sink deep into your soul until it becomes unshakable. The God who understands your struggles is the same God who walks with you in them. And if He is with you, you have nothing to fear. My friend, I want you to hear this deep in your heart today. Your struggles have purpose. I know that may be hard to believe when you're in the middle of the battle, when the pain is raw, when the nights feel endless, when the questions go unanswered. It's easy to think, this is pointless. This is just random suffering. But according to the Word of God, nothing in the life of a believer is wasted. Not a tear, not a trial, not a single difficult season. God is a master at taking what the enemy meant for evil and turning it into something good. Romans 8:28 says, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who are called according to His purpose. Notice it doesn't say some things. It doesn't say only the good things or the easy things. It says all things. That means the things you understand and the things you don't. The seasons you loved and the seasons you hated. The victories and the losses. The blessings and the heartbreaks. Every single one is part of the process God is using to shape your life. We often think of God's purpose as some big, distant plan. A ministry, a calling, a mission. And that's true, but His purpose is also in the day-to-day refining of your character. You see, struggles have a way of bringing things to the surface that comfort never could. When life is easy, we can drift into self-reliance, thinking we're in control. But when a storm hits, we discover how much we truly need God. And that's when faith begins to deepen. If you look through the Bible, you'll see that almost every great man or woman of God went through seasons of struggle before they stepped into their calling. Moses spent 40 years in the desert before God used him to deliver Israel. David spent years fleeing from Saul before becoming king. Joseph endured betrayal, slavery, and imprisonment before God placed him in a position to save an entire nation. Why? Because the struggle was part of the preparation. God uses the fire to purify, the pressure to strengthen, and the waiting to develop trust. Sometimes God allows struggles to strip away things that are holding us back. We may not see it at the time, but there are attitudes, habits, relationships, or dependencies that cannot go with us into the next season He has planned. So He allows challenges to loosen our grip, to help us let go, and to make space for something better. It's like a gardener pruning a vine, not to harm it, but to help it produce more fruit. Jesus said in John 15 that every branch that bears fruit is pruned so it will bear even more. The cutting hurts, but the result is growth. Struggles also have a way of revealing God's power in ways we would never experience otherwise. Think about it. How would you know God as your healer unless you had been sick? How would you know Him as your provider unless you had been in need? How would you know Him as your comforter unless you had walked through grief? The very thing you wish you could erase from your life might be the thing that gives you the deepest revelation of who God is. There's another reason your struggles have purpose. They equip you to help others. 2 Corinthians 1:4 says God comforts us in all our troubles so that we can comfort others with the same comfort we have received. When you've been through the fire and found God faithful, you have a testimony. You can look someone in the eye who is hurting and say, I know what you're feeling, but I also know God will see you through. And that kind of encouragement is powerful because it's born out of experience. Now, I'm not saying God causes every hardship. We live in a broken world, and sometimes pain comes simply because of sin's effects on creation. But even in those moments, God can redeem what was meant to destroy you. He can take the shattered pieces of your life and create something beautiful. You may not see it now, but there will come a day when you look back and realize He was weaving purpose through the pain all along. I think about the refining of gold. Gold in its raw form is mixed with impurities. To make it pure, it has to go through intense heat. The fire causes the impurities to rise to the surface so they can be removed. The goldsmith keeps heating and skimming until he can see his reflection in the metal. That's exactly what God does with us. The heat of struggle brings hidden weaknesses, fears, and sins to the surface, not to condemn us, but so He can remove them. And He keeps working until His image is reflected in our lives. The problem is, we often want the product without the process. We want strong faith without trials, deep wisdom without mistakes, patience without waiting. But God knows that the very thing we're asking for requires the very struggles we're trying to avoid. He's not being cruel. He's being faithful. He's answering our prayers for growth by allowing the circumstances that will produce it. If you're in a struggle right now, I encourage you to change your question. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Lord, what do you want to do in me through this? That shift in perspective can turn frustration into expectation. It can turn despair into hope, because when you believe your struggles have purpose, you stop seeing them as roadblocks and start seeing them as stepping stones. Remember, God sees the whole picture. You see the present moment, but He sees the beginning, the middle, and the end. He knows how today's tears are watering tomorrow's harvest. He knows how today's pain is shaping tomorrow's strength. And He knows that the story He is writing in your life will bring glory to Him and good to you. My friend, I know it's not easy. There will be days when you feel like you're taking 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. There will be moments when you wonder if anything is changing, but keep trusting, keep believing, keep walking, because the God who understands your struggles also knows exactly how to use them. And one day, you will stand on the other side, look back, and see that the very thing you thought would break you actually became the thing that built you. Your struggles are not meaningless. They are not wasted. They are part of God's plan to make you more like Jesus, to equip you for your calling, and to reveal His glory in your life. And when you know that, you can endure with hope, because the God who allows the struggle is also the God who will bring you through it stronger, wiser, and more like Him than ever before. My friend, when we say that God's promises remain unshakable, we are declaring a truth that can hold your heart steady no matter how fierce the storm becomes. Life changes, people change, circumstances change, but the promises of God stand firm through every season, every struggle, and every shifting moment of your journey. When God says something, you can take it as absolute truth, not because the situation looks favorable, not because you can see the outcome yet, but because the one who made the promise is faithful and cannot lie. There's a reason the Bible often calls God a rock. A rock doesn't move when the wind blows. A rock doesn't shift when the rain falls. A rock doesn't crumble when pressure comes. And that is exactly how His promises are. They remain the same yesterday, today, and forever. Hebrews 7:23 says, "Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for He who promised is faithful." It doesn't say hold on until you feel like it or until things get better. It says hold unswervingly. That means no matter what your emotions are screaming, no matter what the headlines say, no matter how long you've been waiting, you keep holding on because His word does not fail. But here's where the challenge comes in sometimes. Between the promise and the fulfillment, there is a waiting season. And waiting is hard. It's in the waiting that doubt creeps in. It's in the waiting that you're tempted to wonder if God has forgotten you. It's in the waiting that the enemy whispers, "If God really loved you, He would have done it by now." But my friend, God's timing is not our timing, and His ways are higher than our ways. Just because you don't see the promise yet doesn't mean He's not keeping it. Think about Abraham. God promised him that he would be the father of many nations. But 25 years passed before Isaac was born. Think about Joseph. God gave him dreams of leadership and influence, but before that dream came true, he was betrayed, enslaved, and imprisoned for years. Think about the Israelites. God promised them the land of Canaan, but it took 40 years of wandering in the wilderness before they entered it. In every case, the delay did not mean the promise was broken. It simply meant God was preparing the people for the promise and the promise for the people. One of the reasons God's promises remain unshakable is because they are not dependent on human strength. If they were, they would fail the moment we got tired, discouraged, or distracted. But God's promises depend solely on His character, and His character never changes. He is not a man that He should lie, nor the Son of Man that He should change His mind. If He has said it, He will do it. If He has spoken it, He will bring it to pass. Sometimes we make the mistake of measuring the promise by the size of the obstacle. We look at our bank account and think, there's no way God's provision is coming. We look at the doctor's report and think, there's no way God's healing is possible. We look at the broken relationship and think, there's no way God can restore this. But friend, the size of the problem doesn't determine the certainty of the promise. If God could part the Red Sea, make manna fall from heaven, bring water from a rock, and raise the dead, then your situation is not beyond His reach. Another reason His promises are unshakable is because they are anchored in His word, and His word endures forever. The world changes its standards, cultures shift their values, but the word of God stands eternal. Isaiah 48 says, "The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God will stand forever." That means when you build your life on His promises, you are building on a foundation that cannot be destroyed by time, by trouble, or by the attacks of the enemy. there will be moments in your life when you have to make a choice. Will you believe what you see, or will you believe what he has said? Believing what you see will always lead you to fear, but believing what he has said will always lead you to faith. That's why it's so important to keep his promises before your eyes and in your heart. When the pressure comes, you need to be able to declare, God said, he will never leave me nor forsake me. When anxiety rises, you need to remind yourself, God said, he will keep me in perfect peace if my mind is stayed on him. When you feel weak, you can hold on to, God said his grace is sufficient and his strength is made perfect in weakness. Sometimes God allows us to face situations that test our faith precisely so we can discover that his promises are trustworthy. It's one thing to read about his faithfulness in the Bible. It's another to experience it firsthand. And the more you walk with him, the more you'll see that every single time he has said he will do something, he has done it, often in ways far greater than you expected. Holding on to God's promises doesn't mean you'll never feel discouraged. It doesn't mean you won't have moments of doubt. Even great men and women of faith in the Bible had those moments. But it does mean that in those moments, you return to the truth of his word and remind yourself of who he is. That's why David could say in Psalm 27, 1-14, I remain confident of this, I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord, be strong, and take heart and wait for the Lord. My friend, I don't know what promise you're holding on to today. Maybe it's the promise of healing. Maybe it's the promise of provision. Maybe it's the promise of peace in your home. Maybe it's the promise that God will work all things together for your good. Whatever it is, don't let go. The enemy will try to convince you that it's over, but God has the final word, and his word cannot be broken. The same God who made promises to Abraham, Joseph, David, and countless others is the same God who has made promises to you, and he is still in the business of fulfilling them. Your job is not to figure out how or when. Your job is to trust that he will. And as you wait, keep doing what he's called you to do. Keep praying, keep serving, keep believing, because the God who understands your struggles also understands the perfect moment to bring the promise to pass. You see, when the promise is fulfilled, it won't just bless you. It will glorify him. People will look at your life and know there's no way this could have happened apart from the hand of God. And that's exactly how he wants it to be, so that your story becomes a testimony that draws others to him. So let your heart rest today. The promise may be delayed, but it is not denied. The road may be long, but it is leading somewhere good. The night may be dark, but the dawn is coming. Hold on to his promises because they are anchored in the unchanging, unstoppable, unshakable character of Almighty God. And if he said it, he will do it. Every single time.